Today, we're diving into an absolutely incredible series of verses from Surah Al-Imran. These were revealed right after a really devastating defeat for the early Muslims, and what they do is offer this divine roadmap for how you navigate a crisis, how you reframe what failure even means, and what the true nature of victory really is.
And it all boils down to this one question. How does your faith survive when you've been completely shattered? I mean, this is a crisis that cuts right to the core of what you believe. And it's a question that, honestly, echoes in our own lives whenever we face a huge, unexpected setback.
To really get what's going on here, you have to picture the scene. We're on the battlefield of Uhud. And this wasn't just a military loss. For the community, it was like a spiritual earthquake. So these verses we're about to look at, they aren't some abstract theological text. Nope. They are a direct, divine intervention in a moment of real, profound trauma. So let's start by looking at that crisis.
Okay, Section 1, a crisis of faith. We really have to try and get into the headspace of the believers at that moment. They were just reeling from the shock, completely overwhelmed by grief, and they were starting to question the very things they were once so certain about.
The commentaries tell us that seeing this staggering difference in numbers, 3,000 enemy soldiers against their 700, it just made their hearts sink. You can just imagine the psychological pressure. It must have been immense.
And right away, we get the first part of the divine answer. The Quran immediately reframes the whole idea of victory. You see, the verse uses this really powerful Arabic structure, ma illa, which basically means nothing except. It completely restricts the idea of victory, making it crystal clear that it comes only from Allah. Not from numbers, not from strategy, not from sheer strength, only from Allah.
And the Quran is so precise with its language. The word used here is bushra, which means glad tidings. This tells you the purpose of the divine promise. It was to bring itminan, or tranquility, to their hearts, to calm their fears in that moment. It was a mercy, a reassurance, but it was totally separate from victory itself, which, as we just saw, remained in Allah's hands alone.
Okay, Section 2, diagnosing the Ummah's heart. So now, the focus shifts. It moves from the external crisis, the battle itself, to an internal diagnosis. The verses start to pinpoint the spiritual issues that were the real root cause of the defeat. Madudi's commentary points out a really critical error that happened on the battlefield. Some of the archers left their strategic posts because they were overcome by a desire for the spoils of war. But you see, that action was just a symptom of a much, much deeper spiritual problem.
And this is fascinating. The Quran doesn't just scold them for the mistake on the battlefield. It goes straight to the source, the prohibition of riba, or usury. Why? Because that practice creates a mindset of greed and selfishness, the exact same mindset that led to the mistake at Uhud. The verse even uses this metaphor, la ta'kulu, which means do not eat, to describe consuming this kind of wealth. And then, in the middle of all that chaos, things got even worse. A rumor started flying around that the Prophet, peace be upon him, had been killed. And just like that, total panic. Morale completely collapsed. Some people lost all hope, and the commentaries even note that some hypocrites started saying, hey, maybe we should just ask the enemy for amnesty. And the divine response to this panic? It's this incredibly sharp, piercing question. The verse asks, is your faith attached to a mortal man, or is it attached to the eternal God? The message couldn't be clearer. Prophets are human. They pass away, but the truth they carry is eternal. Your faith has to be anchored to the message, not just the messenger.
Section 3. The character of the victorious. So after diagnosing the illness, so to speak, the Quran gives the cure. It starts to outline the ideal character of a true believer, and it's a direct contrast to the flaws that led to the defeat in the first place. And what we see here is just a night and day difference. On one side, you have the mindset of riba, usury, which is all about greed, selfishness, and fear. On the other side, you have the mindset of infaq, spending for God's cause, which builds generosity, self-control, and forgiveness. The verses are showing us two totally opposing paths. One leads to failure, and the other leads to real success.
This verse is describing the people who are prepared for paradise. And look at their qualities. Their generosity isn't just for when times are good. They spend during times of ease and during adara, which means severe hardship. And just as important is their incredible emotional discipline. Okay, let's zoom in on this phrase, al-kadhimin al-ghayth, because the Arabic here is just incredible. It literally means those who swallow their anger. The word evokes this powerful image of tying the mouth of a full water skin so tight that absolutely nothing can spill out. So it's not about not feeling anger, it's about having complete and total control over.
And for the people who did mess up, the Quran doesn't just leave them there. It shows a clear way back. Ayat 135 describes people who, when they do something wrong, they immediately remember Allah and ask for forgiveness. But here's the key condition. وَلَمْ يُسِرُّوا. They don't knowingly persist in their mistake.
All right, Section 4, Divine Wisdom and Hardship. Now the lens pulls way back. The verses start to reframe the entire event of Uhud. It stops being just a simple defeat and becomes this profound, divinely willed test that has a much, much higher purpose.
To kind of put things in perspective, Allah reminds them of the Battle of Badr, where their enemies suffered a crushing defeat. The message here is all about resilience. It's like saying, hey, hardship isn't unique to you. Your opponents have felt this kind of pain too.
And again, the word choice here is so important. The word used for wound is qarhun. This isn't just a quick cut. It's more like a sore, a lingering pain. It implies that this test at Uhud was meant to be a deep, searching trial of the community's long-term character and resolve.
So what was the divine wisdom behind this whole painful trial? Well, the verses and commentaries lay out a few key purposes. First, it was like a crucible, designed to make it obvious who the true believers were and to separate them from the hypocrites. It was also meant to purify the faithful through hardship. And it was a way to select from among them shuhada, or witnesses.
And that word, shihada, is so deep. It actually has a dual meaning. First, yes, it refers to the martyrs who gave their lives, but it also means witnesses. So this defeat was part of a process to choose those who were truly worthy of bearing witness to the truth before all of humanity. What a noble station.
And so we come to our final section, the path to true superiority. And you'll see, this whole passage doesn't end on a note of sadness. It ends with this incredibly powerful, forward-looking command that gives the community and us a clear and empowering way forward. This might be the most powerful verse of reassurance in the entire passage. لا تهينوا ولا تحزنوا. Do not weaken and do not grieve. And then comes the promise, you are al-a'lun, the highest, the superior. But there's one condition, if you are true believers.
And that's really the core lesson here, isn't it? The ultimate redefinition of victory. The verses teach us that true superiority isn't found in the outcome of a battle. It's found in the quality of your faith, the strength of your character, and your unwavering commitment to the truth, no matter what the worldly result looks like.
And so, this leaves us with a final question for our own lives. We all face our own personal uhuds, our own shattering defeats and setbacks. The lesson of these verses is absolutely timeless. The real question isn't if we'll face hardship, but how we respond when we do. How do we turn those moments of loss into catalysts for real, profound spiritual growth?